Hey everyone, it's B007 back with a couple of movie reviews. I've actually been watching lots of films and not doing the podcast, so we're going to catch up with a couple of episodes talking about some new releases and some movies that are in the news for the Oscars. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about September 5 and The Order, both of which have been released relatively recently. So, let's kick off with September 5, which for me, I think will be one of my films of the year. It's a stunning film depicting the horrific and murderous attack on Israeli athletes at the 1972 Munich Olympics by the Palestinian terrorist group Black September. And it's an event that, if you love film, you've probably seen depicted in Kevin MacDonald's superb and really comprehensive documentary, One Day in September. I would urge you to go check that out. It was released in 2006 and it will tell you everything you want to know about the complexity, the nuance, and the horror of this terrorist attack. But this film, I think, does something very different and equally as valid. It tells us the story through the eyes of the ABC, so the American sports journalists, who were present in the Olympic Village when the attack happened. And of course, this is the first Olympics that could take advantage of satellite broadcasting and have TV cameras broadcasting live back home. So, as a result, this is also the first terrorist attack to be broadcast live to the world on TV, well before Mumbai or 9/11. And it created iconic images which are actually used as live in this film, but also really deep moral questions about how far live coverage enables and recruits for terrorists. And I think it's something we saw in that Mumbai attack in particular, right? So, how far does the live coverage tip off terrorists about what the police are trying to do to curtail their attacks? As the film opens, we're in a dark, claustrophobic ABC sports room recreated by the director Tim Fehlbaum and his team in precise detail. The journalists hear shots fired and suddenly realize they're in the midst of this attack and they have to figure out, oh my goodness, so how do we wheel our heavy camera equipment designed for a studio out to the village to shoot footage of the apartments where the Olympians are being held? And they also have to sort of, get on these landline phones and try and wrestle competitively for satellite slots because you didn't have a 24-hour satellite news feed. You had sort of like an hour or 2 hours a day. And they also have to wrestle for control of the story because obviously the ABC News team back in America is saying, look, you guys do not have the skill set to manage the story. This is no longer sports, this is news. And actually, although they do a phenomenal job, as the movie unravels, you'll see that they do take the wrong decisions. They do make mistakes because this is so new, this is so radical, and they are basically out of their depth. It's hard to know who the lead performance is in this film because it really is an ensemble piece with all the journalists. But I loved the powerful and pivotal role of actress Leonie Benesch, who you may remember from back in the day in The White Ribbon. And she plays a young German journalist who has to become a kind of impromptu translator, listening into police radio, listening into local news reports, and relaying that information back to the Americans. You've also got as anchors of this piece the brilliant Peter Sarsgaard, who's kind of like in charge of the whole operation. We also have a very moving performance by Ben Chaplin, who plays the journalist who wants more constraint, who's questioning morally what they should be showing. And he's in contrast with the actor John Magaro, who wants to be the person who wins the scoop. So that's the kind of the moral kind of dilemma that's playing out here. When you think of that sort of notorious 1972 Munich Olympics, I think there are two iconic and notorious moments centered on the coverage of it, the news coverage. There's many notorious and iconic moments about how the police mishandled it, how the German authorities handled it, and other things. But there are two iconic moments from a TV perspective. The first is when the TV journalists realize that the terrorists are actually watching the footage that they're broadcasting, because none of the German authorities have thought to cut the news feed into the apartment rooms. And there's a very, very iconic picture of one of the hooded terrorists looking back down the barrel of the TV camera, it's still haunting to this day. And that moment, that realization is captured very powerfully in this film. The second iconic and equally powerful image is when an ABC journalist played by John Magaro, as I said before, chooses to relay an unconfirmed report that all the sportsmen have been released alive and well without confirmation, and he just wants the scoop. Overall, I think this is an amazing, it's almost like a sort of journalistic procedural. I love this style of film. Kudos to Fehlbaum, the production team, and in particular his editor Hans-Jörg Weisbrich for creating a film of such taut, spare suspense and high stakes. The look and feel of it just take you right into 1972. The fast-paced need for judgment, the claustrophobia. It gives you real sympathy for the journalists making tough choices in what we have to remember was uncharted territory. Most of all, I really love the way in which the real footage that was actually broadcast on ABC was seamlessly woven into the fictional recreation. So at some point you see someone in our fictional world in the studio relaying a message into the earpiece of the guy on air, the real journalist on air for ABC, and then that person kind of reacting. It's really a tour de force of editing. So overall, September 5th, it's a movie people should watch, partly because this is an event that people should remember. I'd urge you to also watch One Day in September if you're really interested in this topic, but definitely check it out. It's rated R, has a running time of 95 minutes. It played Venice, Toronto, and Telluride 24. It was released in the USA on January 17th and in the UK on February 6th and is still in cinemas now. Okay, let's move to The Order, which is a film that is produced by Amazon Prime Video, so you can watch it now on Amazon. It's also based on a real life historic terrorist event or series of terrorist events. And it's set in early 80s small town Midwestern America. And the feds are on the trail of a young, charismatic neo-Nazi called Bob Matthews. And he's already orchestrated a series of robberies, but he's obviously making this war chest to fund a big counter insurrection or attack on America. And interestingly, his foundational text is the same one that inspired many of those involved in the January 6th insurrection. So both, I think, September 5th and The Order, chillingly, unfortunately, have resonances to contemporary politics. This film is directed by an Aussie director called Justin Kurzel, and I just love every film he makes. This is another really great film. His films, he tends to focus on disturbed and disturbing people committing or manipulating people to murder, which is sometimes more interesting. And they often have these very spare, stark scripts and feature very brutal but stirring central performances. He has a long time, or a set of long time collaborators, but his DP, his cinematographer, Adam Arkapow, often sets or contrasts the moral corruption of man against a backdrop of stunning landscapes, and the same is true of this film. There's some beautiful landscape photography in this film. I absolutely adored Kurzel's film Snowtown, Macbeth, and most recently Nitram, all of which gave us character portraits of tortured evil. And this is the same thing. It's a character study of tortured evil, but set in a patient, slow burn police procedural, which is a format that I absolutely love. So, who does it star? We've got Nicholas Hoult, who you may know from The Great, the hilarious TV show, but he has also recently starred in Juror Number Two, which was another very patient, rather old fashioned courtroom drama. Again, a very strong central performance. Here he plays cult leader Bob Matthews. He's handsome, he's convincing, he's quite low key and quite charmly, but it is amazing how swiftly, how calmly he can whip up a mob. And that's particularly haunting and frightening, frankly. And he plays opposite Jude Law, who, from his early career in the 90s, is an incredibly handsome, beautiful man. I think he's now giving his career best performances in his middle career because he's thrown off some of that pretty boy expectation that surrounded him. He was amazing as a very sinister older Henry VIII in Firebrand that was released in September of last year. And he's back with another really self-effacing, impressive performance as a decent but scarred federal officer called Terry Husk. And basically, this is a film that sort of pits the Jude Law and the Nicholas Hoult characters against each other in a script by Zach Balin, who wrote the script for Creed 3. It's like I said before, it's spare, it's slow ratcheting, it's anxiety inducing, it's patient. I think it's a really intelligent film. That is a central kind of conflicting set of performances, but I also really love the scenes between Nicholas Holtz Matthews and his father, who's this sort of David Duke type figure played convincingly by Victor Slezak. I am really impressed by September 5th. I'm really impressed by The Order. Both of them have a kind of throwback feel. They're just good adult films about serious topics that bring sophistication, nuance, patience, slow build, slow burn, intensity. I think both of them will really repay a watch. For me, both are fantastic. Both deserve to be seen in cinemas, actually, because both have something really beautiful in their visual and production design that deserves the big screen. I think you might be a bit too late for that with The Order, though, and it's now available for screening at home. It did, however, play Venice and Toronto 2024. It's rated R and has a running time of 116 minutes. I hope you love both of those films. If you like them, dislike them, leave a message at bina007.com or on the YouTube channel. Thank you for listening.